How does a motorcycle club go from bar fights to controlling multi-million-dollar operations across an entire country? The Hells Angels arrived in Canada in the late 1970s. What they've built since then isn't just about brotherhood and bikes. It's about power, territory, and profits that most legitimate businesses would envy. We're exposing their real operation, the one that has kept investigators busy for decades. First, their strategic invasion of Canada. Then, the revenue streams that fund their empire. Finally, the corporate structure that keeps them untouchable. The story begins with a single charter crossing the border. What happened next would reshape organized crime in Canada forever. According to police reports, the Hells Angels established their first official presence in Quebec in the late 1970s. Within a few years, they controlled more criminal territory than gangs that had operated for decades. What investigators later discovered wasn't just another motorcycle club expansion, it was a calculated invasion. The Hells Angels didn't stumble into Canada by accident. They identified existing motorcycle clubs with established territories and systematically absorbed them through intimidation, violence, and strategic recruitment. The Popeyes Motorcycle Club in Quebec became their primary target, according to law enforcement accounts. This local gang controlled significant drug trafficking routes along the St. Lawrence River and had spent years building connections with suppliers from the United States. The takeover wasn't subtle. According to investigations, Hells Angels members from established American chapters began appearing at Popeyes clubhouses. They offered membership patches to key Popeyes leaders while simultaneously making it clear that refusal meant elimination. Several Popeyes members who initially resisted the merger allegedly disappeared entirely. Others were reportedly found beaten so severely that hospitalization lasted months. Early responses from some agencies underestimated the threat, according to later reporting. Intelligence reports from this period allegedly described them as motorcycle enthusiasts who occasionally engaged in bar fights. This assessment ignored mounting evidence of coordinated criminal activity spanning multiple provinces. The Hells Angels' expansion strategy targeted transportation corridors that connected major urban centers. They established chapters in cities positioned along key smuggling routes from the United States border to population centers like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Each new chapter received direct support from established American chapters, including financial backing, weapons, and experienced members who understood large-scale criminal operations. Violence became their primary tool for territorial control. Investigations later revealed violent confrontations with rival gangs throughout Quebec's criminal underworld. The message resonated clearly: resistance meant severe consequences. Prison networks provided another recruitment avenue that existing Canadian gangs had largely ignored. Hells Angels prospects regularly visited federal penitentiaries, identifying inmates with useful skills or connections. They offered protection, financial support for families, and guaranteed employment upon release. Former inmates brought knowledge of law enforcement procedures, court systems, and other criminal organizations' weaknesses. The organizational structure they implemented surpassed anything Canadian law enforcement had encountered. Each chapter operated with military-style hierarchy and discipline. Prospects underwent extensive vetting processes that could last years before receiving full membership. Members followed strict codes of conduct that prohibited cooperation with authorities under any circumstances. Investigations later showed evidence of organized bookkeeping systems that tracked income from multiple illegal enterprises. Chapter treasurers allegedly maintained records documenting various revenue streams and operational expenses. This level of organization allowed rapid expansion while maintaining quality control across different criminal activities. Within a few years, Hells Angels chapters had established operations across Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta. They allegedly controlled major cocaine distribution networks that generated millions in annual revenue. Protection rackets targeted nightclub owners, construction companies, and illegal gambling operations throughout urban centers. Their influence extended into legitimate businesses through intimidation and strategic partnerships with corrupt officials. law enforcement agencies began recognizing the scope of Hells Angels operations only after violent conflicts with established crime families made headlines. Investigators discovered that the organization had systematically eliminated or absorbed every significant rival gang in Quebec within several years. Their transformation was complete. The Hells Angels had evolved from a single chapter of motorcycle enthusiasts into Canada's most powerful criminal organization. They controlled more territory, generated higher revenues, and commanded more fear than crime families that had operated for generations. Traditional organized crime groups found themselves either negotiating subordinate relationships or facing extinction. This criminal empire required constant funding to maintain operations across multiple provinces. The revenue streams they developed would generate numbers that most people couldn't imagine. Drug trafficking forms the backbone of their financial operations. Investigators estimate that cocaine arrives in Canada through established smuggling networks connecting South American cartels to distribution points in major cities. Hells Angels chapters allegedly control wholesale markets, purchasing large quantities directly from suppliers and breaking them down for street-level sales. The profit margins on these operations are reportedly substantial, with investigators describing returns that dwarf most legitimate businesses. Methamphetamine production represents one of their most profitable domestic operations, according to law enforcement reports. Chapters in British Columbia and Alberta allegedly operate manufacturing facilities hidden in remote locations. These labs reportedly produce crystal methamphetamine with high purity levels that command premium prices in urban markets. Production costs remain relatively low while street sales generate significant returns, explaining why chapters invest heavily in equipment and security personnel. Their criminal portfolio extends far beyond narcotics. Human trafficking operations allegedly generate millions annually through forced prostitution networks spanning multiple provinces. Victims are reportedly recruited through false employment promises, then transported between cities. Each victim generates substantial weekly revenue according to prosecutors, with minimal operational costs beyond transportation and security. Illegal gambling operations flourish under Hells Angels protection in cities across Canada, according to investigations. Underground casinos operate in warehouse districts, offering high-stakes poker games and sports betting for wealthy clientele seeking anonymity. These establishments pay substantial protection fees monthly, with amounts varying based on revenue volume. The Hells Angels provide security, resolve disputes, and eliminate competition from rival organizations. Protection rackets target legitimate businesses in construction, transportation, and hospitality industries. Nightclub owners pay monthly fees to prevent vandalism, employee intimidation, and competitor harassment. Construction companies operating in Hells Angels territory face demands for protection payments. Refusal results in equipment sabotage, worker intimidation, and project delays that cost more than compliance. Support clubs and associate members provide operational insulation for full-patch Hells Angels. These subordinate groups handle street-level drug sales, debt collection, and other high-risk activities that expose participants to arrest. Associates receive financial compensation and protection in exchange for handling activities that would expose full members to prosecution. This structure allows territorial expansion without increasing direct exposure to law enforcement surveillance. Different chapters specialize in criminal activities based on geographic advantages and local opportunities. Vancouver chapters focus on drug importation through Pacific shipping routes and connections to Asian organized crime groups, according to investigators. Montreal chapters allegedly dominate cocaine trade through established relationships with American suppliers. Toronto chapters concentrate on protection rackets and money laundering through the city's extensive financial sector. Financial investigations have revealed the scope of their earnings through asset seizures and money laundering prosecutions. Major operations have resulted in seizures worth millions in assets, including real estate, luxury vehicles, boats, and cash reserves. Investigators estimated these seizures represented only a fraction of the organization's total assets. Law enforcement agencies suggest Canadian Hells Angels operations generate hundreds of millions annually. Revenue flows through complex networks of legitimate businesses, offshore accounts, and cash-based transactions that complicate financial tracking efforts. The scale of these operations requires victims and community businesses to pay substantial costs through extortion and intimidation, according to prosecutors. Maintaining these revenue streams while avoiding complete law enforcement shutdown requires more than just criminal expertise. It demands sophisticated organizational methods that protect profits and insulate leadership from prosecution. The Hells Angels operate like a Fortune 500 company, complete with regional divisions, quality control, and employee benefits. The only difference is their board meetings sometimes end with body counts. This sophisticated organizational structure has allowed them to survive decades of law enforcement pressure, while traditional crime families crumbled under similar scrutiny. The hierarchical system begins with prospects who reportedly undergo extensive vetting processes lasting 1 to 3 years according to law enforcement sources. Prospects are alleged to demonstrate criminal earning capacity, loyalty to existing members, and willingness to commit violent acts on command. They reportedly pay monthly dues, provide free labor for established members, and complete specific criminal assignments to prove their value. Prospects cannot speak at meetings, wear full patches, or participate in decision-making until they achieve full membership status. Full patch members receive voting rights in chapter decisions, territorial assignments for criminal operations, and protection from rival organizations, according to investigations. Each member allegedly must generate minimum monthly earnings for the chapter treasury, with amounts varying based on local opportunities. Members who fail to meet financial requirements reportedly face discipline, ranging from physical beatings to expulsion from the organization. Legitimate businesses serve as fronts for money laundering operations throughout Canada, according to prosecutors. Chapters allegedly own construction companies that inflate project costs to justify cash payments from illegal activities. The Oshawa chapter reportedly operates heavy-duty cycles, a motorcycle dealership that processes transactions for drug proceeds through inflated parts sales and service charges. Quebec chapters allegedly control numerous bars and nightclubs that report cash revenues far exceeding actual customer receipts. This corporate-style structure creates prosecution challenges that traditional organized crime families never presented. Unlike hierarchical crime families with clear leadership chains, Hells Angels chapters operate as semi-autonomous units with shared resources and common goals. Prosecutors struggle to prove conspiracy charges when criminal activities appear decentralized across multiple chapters and associate groups. Legal strategies reportedly employ high-powered defense attorneys who specialize in organized crime prosecutions. Chapters allegedly maintain legal defense funds that provide immediate representation for arrested members. Defense teams exploit procedural technicalities, challenge evidence collection methods, and file appeals that delay prosecutions for years. Modern surveillance countermeasures reportedly include compartmentalized communication systems that limit information exposure between different criminal activities. Members allegedly use encrypted messaging applications, disposable phones, and coded language that complicates wiretapping efforts, according to investigators. Territorial control operates through systematic intimidation of rivals, combined with alleged corruption of local officials. Chapters reportedly identify police officers, court clerks, and municipal employees who accept bribes for information about investigations and prosecutions. These corrupt relationships allegedly provide advance warning about raids, surveillance operations, and pending charges against members. Strategic alliances with other criminal organizations expand their influence without direct territorial conflicts, according to law enforcement reports. Hells Angels chapters allegedly negotiate agreements with Italian organized crime families, Asian triads, and Russian criminal groups for specific criminal enterprises. These partnerships reportedly provide access to specialized criminal services while maintaining territorial boundaries that prevent violent conflicts. Fear remains their most effective control mechanism. Public executions of rivals send clear messages about consequences for territorial challenges. Witnesses refuse to cooperate with authorities, understanding that testimony means death. Geographic expansion continues through strategic placement of new chapters in cities with underdeveloped criminal markets, according to investigators. Recent chapters allegedly established in smaller cities throughout Ontario and Alberta target local drug distribution networks and protection rackets previously controlled by independent operators. Current membership numbers reflect their dominance in Canadian organized crime. Law enforcement estimates suggest several hundred full-patch members across multiple chapters, supported by thousands of associates and support club members. This corporate efficiency, combined with criminal ruthlessness, has created an organization that adapts faster than law enforcement can respond. Traditional investigative methods struggle against an enemy that operates with business-like discipline while maintaining the violence necessary to control criminal markets. The scope of their success becomes clear when examining three key factors. They gain territory through systematic absorption of existing gangs using violence and intimidation. They generate revenue through drug trafficking, human trafficking, protection rackets, and money laundering operations. Their corporate structure and strict codes of silence protect leadership from prosecution while maintaining operational efficiency. Authorities have conducted numerous arrests and invested significant resources investigating Hells Angels operations, yet new chapters continue opening across Canada. Membership numbers grow despite constant surveillance efforts. The challenge facing law enforcement isn't just catching criminals, it's dismantling an organization that operates like a business while maintaining the violence necessary for territorial control. Like the video if you enjoyed this breakdown. Subscribe for more deep dives into the world crime, and tell us in the comments which part surprised you most. See you next time on Crime Republic.